All right, everyone, welcome to Silverback Publishing's In Conversation with me, yours truly, A.M. Adair. And this time I have T.R. Hendricks with me. Tim, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for the invite from Silverback. I greatly appreciate being here. This is like a meeting of the initials, you know. Let's see.
It is.
And
It is.
yeah.
I
We
say,
can't use our full names anymore.
well, I think plausible deniability's kind of gone out the window, so
Yeah.
people
I
might know by now.
I blame Game of Thrones.
You can blame everything on the final season, regardless of how you felt about it. But this is going to be for the lead up to the launch of my first novella. I had a blast with it, so I'm thinking there are going to be more novellas in the future.
I had a blast with it.
Yeah, we're going to get into it.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
we got stuff to talk about. Yeah, for sure.
But generally, I know the kind of in conversations are kind of a Q&A, and that can be a little repetitive.
Yeah.
So I thought we would keep this a little bit open flow,
Sure.
and just absolutely bust each other's balls left and right. And I thought I would start with a bit of an icebreaker. So
Okay. All right.
Before I left service, I was a warrant officer, so I could do whatever I wanted. Nobody was going to do anything about it. And in our break room, we had a whiteboard that was just not being used.
Mm-hmm.
So I instituted the Nerd Wars. And every couple of days, I would go in and I would do a battle. It would be an A and B battle, and I would let people put up their tick marks of what their preference was.
Love it.
So let's start with an easy one, because I know you're a nerd like me, multifaceted.
Self-admitted.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Hands down. Okay.
Just don't even, and don't even get me started on Battlestar Galactica. Get out of here.
Best melee weapon?
Lightsaber, of course.
I knew you were a kindred spirit. But yes, absolutely.
If we're talking about a fictional melee weapon, I got to go with the lightsaber. If it's a actual one, I'd say like the Morning Star or like the Warhammer, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. That actually gives your character a little bit of pizzazz. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So this might cause some consternation. We might get some debate going in the comments for this one, but here goes. Mitch Rapp or Port Gentry? It's like right now, I can feel,
you're messing with me on this one.
I know, I can feel people like just dying to jump in. And
so I mean, I'm here for the comments too, by the way. I want to say, so like Rapp has such a longevity, and we all kind of like gravitate towards him. It's like a pioneer character, and he's gone through the iterations of like the guest authors now that have continued Flynn's legacy and everything. So I love that, and I loved his origin story and all of that. But if I had to say a personal preference, I go with the Gray Man. Like I like the Gray Man. I like his kind of sauciness and his improvisation, and he's a compelling character. It seems like Mark Graney manages to wring every last ounce out of Court Gentry every single book, and it's like, here's a character that's been around for whatever 13 14 novels, however 90 that he's up to, whatever it is, and every single time there's like another nuance to him. He's still a kick-ass spy. He still can do all the MacGyver shit, and I love it. But like he gets reinvented every book. I think that speaks to Mark's talent, and I connect with that a lot more.
Don't worry, I have your 6. So if anybody comes after you, I've got you on this, because I completely agree. I am 100% in the Gray Man's corner.
Yep.
Playing with those those themes, or kind of that line between good and evil. I mean, he's an assassin. He kills people, but yet we still root for him. That's something that I really, really enjoy. If you couldn't tell, I don't know if you.
I might have picked up on what you were putting down there with your latest work. Just sensing a little something there.
you mentioned origin story, and it is in fact an origin story, but it is an origin story told in a very different manner. And you did read it, and I was honored to get the feedback on that. But
I
one of the
was
things that
honored to be asked to read it. Thank you.
thank you. You had said though that you have, I believe you said it was your father
My
who
father
did a career in the life of corrections.
Yeah, New York City corrections officer. He hated every single moment of it, but he he said, for the first 10 years he did like just under 21 years when all was said and done, and eligible to retire at 20. And he said for the first 10 years he was doing everything that he possibly could to get out of corrections into another career. And then the last 10 years he was also trying to get out, but it was less of a push to do so because the benefits were so good, the pay raises were like guaranteed. He started getting seniority in the union, so he was getting better shifts and steady days off, and so the benefits of the career kind of kicked in, but he was still working a pretty dangerous job. He got he's a brilliant man. He never advanced through the ranks because he didn't want to jeopardize his posting in New York City. There's the main, there's a bunch of prisons in New York City, but the main one that everybody's familiar with is Rikers Island. And he was on Rikers for about I want to say 5 years, the first 5 years of his career. And he worked what they called the Bing, which is like solitary, which is like the worst of the worst. It wasn't general population; it was the real bad mamma jammas. But he volunteered for it because he, again, being smart, he was always looking for an angle to mitigate the officer to inmate ratio. Because if you're working the tiers in Rikers Island, it could be like 1 to 300. But if you're working the Bing, it might be like 1 to 50 or something like that. And then after 5 years, he got posted to Bellevue Hospital, which is on the east side, Lower East Side, right by the UN. And they have a prison ward for the criminally insane. And so he was working there, but it's a hospital, so there's only so many beds, and again, dangerous because of the unpredictability of these criminally insane individuals, but much more of a controlled environment. So he stayed there, and he knew that if he got promoted, went up the ranks or whatnot, they would shift him around to other prisons. And like they called it the wheel, where you would do like the 8 to 4, and then like the next week you would do the 4 to 12, and the next week you would do the 12 to 8. And it's like, it was a nuts thing, and suddenly he's at Bellevue and he's only working 8 to 4s Monday to Friday, and he's like, I'm staying right here for the rest of my career. And he did. But we grew up, well, certainly if you've read some of my stuff, you might notice a hint of cynical dark humor woven throughout.
You are sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah,
and
I know, nothing dark or depressing at all in my stuff. But we largely, I think, as a coping mechanism himself, but also to alleviate his children's fears of him leaving the house every day and whether or not he's going to come back home. He developed this, he's a very funny guy, but he just developed this way of taking these horribly dangerous situations and relating them to us in such a profoundly hysterically funny way that we would, and it wasn't until we read tears to this day. If we get a couple soda pops in him and get him going, he'll tell stories for hours. Some of them we've heard 90 times, and yet they're still entertaining as all hell. But it wasn't until like I was probably like 16, 17, and I was like, wow, I'm done laughing. And I went into my room and I'm like, he told that story, it was so funny, but man, he was almost fucking killed, And so it was it's why, one of many reasons, but a main reason why I call my father my hero, and I dedicated my book to him, my debut to him, because here was a man who sacrificed everything, his intellect, his education, his hopes and dreams of what he wanted to do professionally in his life, and he just hung it all up and went to work day in and day out for 20 years dealing with the absolute worst of humanity. And he did it for his family, he did it for his kids, you know, and that kind of self-sacrifice is something I could only ever hope to emulate, you know. And yeah, so
No,
if you listen to this, Dad, thank you.
aw, it's
Love
like
you.
I completely understand that.
He
you know,
won't be
kind of
listening to this. He doesn't know how podcasts work.
So that's probably a good thing, but
Yeah.
yeah, at the same time, you know, that gives me a lot more context, because when you commented, and I sincerely appreciate it, about hitting
course.
the right notes, because you know, for those
Mhm.
who have only read the back cover kind of description of the book, you know, it happens in prison. Like
Yep.
everything that
Mhm.
is happening in the story is contained in this very, very controlled environment. But even
Mhm.
though it is such a constrained environment, it is extremely dangerous, and
Yes.
just it becomes a character in itself almost.
And that's what I loved about your story is you wove in the nuances so well, um because after, you know, kind of listening to him all those years, you realize that there's this very unique type of societal structure within prison, right? There's smuggling and gambling, and there's a hierarchy, and there's, you know, rival nation states, and I mean, bribery, and the guards are in on it and they're not, you know, and there's one guy who's thinking he's actually there to, you know, rehabilitate the worst of the worst. And there's the prisoners that are trying to rehabilitate. There's the other ones that don't give a shit. It was really, really, I thought, captured well, coming from the perspective that I had, to see that just how you kind of like dictated the yard, or, you know, maybe this guard isn't on, you know, the up and up, and to do it within a novella as well. What was it? 22,000 words, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah,
It got a little bit
like
higher than
it was
that,
like
but it's short.
yeah, it
It's
was
short.
like it was under 100 pages, right? It was like 75, 80 pages. And to capture all that detail and that feeling on top of the actual, like, intriguing storyline, I thought was a real testament to your work. So well done.
I really appreciate that. It does matter to me to hit the right notes. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, you know, setting it in prison was just part of the fun. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, as you mentioned, you know, my work tends to be a little dark as well. And, you know, I would say that origin story is my equivalent of saying, hold my beer.
Yep.
It's like, this is about to get crazy.
Right.
So
Yep. Mm-hmm.
it's like there was dark before with my L. Anderson series, and then
Yeah.
there's Elise Tyson.
Yeah. And now we're going to stab a bunch of people. Yeah. Got it.